Hey, Sam, you come up with that intro line?
You didn't tell me that was today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Writer's Room with Sam and Jim. This is the show where we bring aspiring writers into our writer's room to help them work on and develop their story. And we're going to do that with Lauren White today in just a little bit. But first, Sam wants to go off about something. Sam, what you got?
All right, so I tweeted about this, but I want to talk about it a little more. Jim, you didn't read my
116 characters isn't enough?
That's funny that you think that's how many it is. No, here's the problem. And I don't know, maybe you do this, but if I have a show that I really love, like for me right now, it's The Expanse, I won't watch it, which is completely counter to what you would think.
The law of conservation of good TV?
I'm part of me, it's basically I'm hoarding it.
Yeah.
For a time that I really need it. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, I don't want to watch it if I'm slightly sleepy, if I don't have the right food, right. If my TV room with the big fat TV and the full couch with if it's not clean, I just want it to be ideal circumstances. And even then, if it's ideal, I don't want it. It's like Halloween candy, and I'm the kid that had my Halloween candy at Christmas.
So do you think this is a streaming thing? Because like back in the day, it used to like when Star Trek Next Generation came on, back when we were kids, and we'd get together and watch it, like you were stuck. Like it was Sunday night. Yeah, we were running
to the television. That could be part of it, and they're just stacked up. And I don't know which I hate more, when I have a lot of them ready for me or none, and I'm waiting for the next one to drop when they just do one at a time, like Disney. Right now I'm watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And so they both drive me crazy. And here's the flip side of it. The shows that I hate, I end up watching all at once because I hate them. It's like eating the candy that you don't like first because
to get it out of the cupboard.
Well, you're enjoying the fact that there's sugar in there, but you really don't want to eat all those black jujubes. But the thing is, for me, I hate watch shows. You know I hate watch shows. And I come in and I complain about how terrible the show is, how the writing is terrible and the casting is terrible and the shooting is the worst and blah, 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 blah. And I'll watch it again because I'm just like, oh, man, I can't believe they did that. And then
about 6 episodes in, you usually come and say, okay, I've fallen in love with the show.
I know. I'm completely hooked. And I watch it season after season, complaining the entire time, but loving it. And so what happens now is I'll have The Expanse all queued up, and I'm watching this other show that I won't name that is horrible, but it's light, it's easy. I feel good after it, maybe a little dirty, but
in a good way.
Yeah, but I'm just like, okay, and so consequently, I'm blowing through the shows I hate and not seeing the shows that I love, and this is insanity.
That's perverse, Sam.
I'm broken, man, and there's no hope.
Okay, let's get into this week's show. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to the show. This is Jim.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is Sam, and Lauren, we are super excited that you're here. Jim, why don't you ask her all the questions that I know you're dying to ask Lauren?
Well, where are you right now?
So I'm in Waterloo right now, a small college town about an hour and a half outside of Toronto.
All right. I think you're our first Canadian guest.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Jim and I worked on a show, Haven, as might have read on our page, but we were in Nova Scotia for a bunch of seasons, and we loved it there.
Yeah.
And Canada, it's like America, only better.
Well, and we went to college in Minnesota.
Much better. Yeah.
We went to college in Minnesota, and I have to say, culturally, I felt that the divide between Minnesota and Nova Scotia was much smaller than the divide between Minnesota and many other places inside the United States.
That is true.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Everything works. People are nice. And everybody's white. Is that what you mean?
It might be. I would have thought with the last part, but that's kind of true too.
Anyway, I have to. Can I ask her about this crazy story now? Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So JR does. He wrote down some notes when you guys talked, and I don't know if he made this up because the story is so insane. And I'm gonna ask you about it because I'll just get out the main points because they're not. You worked on a YouTube channel when you were 11. Which, as I was saying, I have a 12-year-old. She's very motivated and very creative, and I could totally see her doing that. Great. That's not weird. That's cool. It's not weird. Then you end up the creative director by 18. That's amazing. Lovely story. Feel-good movie.
Until...
And it ends there.
And if only it ended there.
Yeah.
But
That's it.
So tell us the story. With the ending. Oh my God, the ending.
Well, yeah. So I was watching when I was 11, a group of children's YouTube channels. It was just basically mostly girls my age making skits and just videos about like talking about school and stuff like that. They had like the biggest one, I think, had 1,000 subscribers.
Wow.
So I auditioned, I got on, and that was a huge part of my life. I turned 14, and that's when I decided to take a more behind the scenes role in the channels. And I started working on like management with organizing things amongst the girls and a lot of scripting. So that's where I really started to get into writing for not just short stories and stuff like that, but things that will be filmed.
And on a schedule too. That's hard.
For sure, yeah. And by the time I was 14 too, I was able to quit my job at the cafe I worked at.
Wait, you had a job?
You had a job coming up to 14 that you had to then quit?
You forgot about that child labor thing they got up in Canada.
That's right.
She'd already been done with the mines.
So there's all those 8-year-olds at Tim Hortons making donuts and serving tea.
Of course. Yeah, I turned 14 and I got my first job.
That's incredible. And did you have daycare for your children at that point?
Can you believe it? It's free here.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah. So
I quit that because I was able to start making money from the channels then, which is a big deal.
At 14, that's incredible. I couldn't make I was twice 25. I couldn't make any money writing. That's incredible.
Oh God, well now I will not make any money writing, but yeah, I would get bullied at school for my videos, and then I'd come home and I'd get paid more than my parents sometimes, which was a huge deal.
Wow.
It was crazy. Definitely my peak.
Yes. Wow.
You peaked too early. Oh no.
Yeah, it's definitely been downhill from there.
But that's not the twist, though, is it? I can't wait.
No.
I can't hold it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I quit at 18 or 19 because it was just a horrible, like very stressful, toxic work environment.
Perfect for Hollywood. You're ready now.
Yeah, I am completely ready. It prepared me for many bad bosses after that. And then a few months later, the channels that had almost 10 million subscribers, the largest, got shut down because my boss went to prison for child abuse. So now I am starting from scratch.
That's the part where it all goes. This whole story is so exciting and funny.
I guess a letter of recommendation probably isn't happening, huh?
No.
Oh my God, that is
it's horrible, Lauren.
That is horrible. But you and I'm not going to ask about your personal life, but I'm going to say you did manage to do an amazing amount of writing at a very young age. I mean, that's cool, except for the toxic stuff.
Of course. I mean, yeah, looking back, I mean, I reflect on all those like amazing experiences that I had, and I would do it again, even though it was like horrifyingly abusive at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I would want my children to do that. But I mean, I have such conflicted feelings about it. But right now, all those videos that I made, some of which had like 30 million views on YouTube, they're all gone now.
Oh, wow.
So I'm starting completely from scratch, I feel. Like everything I worked on for like my entire childhood, like videos of myself growing up are kind of gone. I have some, but I'm back at the bottom, I feel.
Well, but hold on. And I want to completely honor what you're saying about the fact that there is that huge loss of material. And that's terrible. But the stuff you learned and the stuff you did, that's yours. And that's what you really need. Because those, just from a tactical, like get a job way, those kinds of credits, they're really great when you're in a room telling people. It's a great story to tell people.
And that you still have.
You absolutely still have. And we always go into meetings still to this day. We haven't owned restaurants in, I don't know how long, ages and ages. But, oh yeah, we're the guys that used to own restaurants, and now and meanwhile, we've been on all these shows. But when we sit down to talk, we're not like, so what was it like to write this particular show? It was, you owned restaurants when you were 22, 23? And we're like, yeah, we did. And that's what we end up talking about. So you have a great life story that will hopefully positively inform your writing, the good and the bad, probably especially the bad, actually.
Hopefully, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So you are working on a story. Let's hear about your story. And is it like that? Is it an hour long? Is it about the loss of innocence, the watching, or is it, what is it?
It's about nothing related to that. After that, I really started trying to write things that were for not children. Not because like I'm traumatized by it, but because I'm ready to write other things.
Right.
So this story that I'm pitching is a 30-minute comedy called Inconceivable, and it's about two completely different couples on every opposite side of every social or political spectrum coming together through like the coincidence of sperm, basically. I got
that is a log line for a show right there.
Let's take a breath. First of all, obviously that's your title. The
coincidence of sperm.
I would read that. Okay. I have no idea what that means though. So I'm eagerly listening, even though I'm interrupting.
Yeah, unpack this for us a little bit.
Well, I think I kind of have to tell you how I thought about it because there's a lot of information that I learned that I didn't know about before. I was listening to a podcast by a British lesbian couple, and they were talking about their experience trying to conceive. And they were talking about how they found the perfect sperm donor, but he was under exclusivity, which I had no idea about. And that's when that donor's sperm, because he is such a great donor, all the perfect genes will go to only one family. So for that couple, they had to pay exclusivity fees plus all of their units of sperm. So it would have cost them over 70,000 pounds, I think they said, and they could no longer afford that donor.
So he was kind of a kept man in a way.
Yeah. So in this, I'm kind of playing with some of the rules of exclusivity. I have these two completely different couples, both wanting the same exclusive sperm donor. And kind of in the pilot the idea I have is that they would end up splitting the exclusivity right and all the units of sperm amongst each other. So that causes them to have the only two kids from this donor, and that kind of sparks a relationship between the two couples. And I want them to be kind of continually tied together through like this idea of family, this idea of being related to one another, having their kids know each other, and then also through other things like maybe money or stealing from each other. I have quite a few ideas, and I don't know which is the right one, but yeah, that's my idea, Inconceivable.
It's interesting. It's kind of an updated take on the in-laws, right? You'd always have the young couple, they get together, and now they have to meet the parents on each side, and there's some, vast gulf between the two sets of in-laws, except now they're half-siblings. Right. That are now related through the sperm of the donor.
Well, I guess that's my question is how old are these kids? Are they already born? Are we starting when they are first meeting each other? And then, it's a half hour, so we don't have a ton of time for story. Or we have time, of course, but, and of course a half hour, just to say it is not 22 minutes. It can be 30, which helps a lot.
I don't know. You tell us.
When are they meeting?
It's not about the kids; it's about the parents.
No, 100%. But you can I'll get into that. But when are they meeting? Do you think in your current version? Because I can see a few ways.
Yeah.
They meet while they're both picking out the sperm donor. So my idea is they are in the sperm bank, and through a coincidence, they're both there at the same time. And they end up bidding against each other, trying to drive the price of the donor higher and higher because they want the sperm donor and then the other couple wants the sperm donor, causing them to split the exclusivity rights. So they meet in the midst of this bidding war, basically, for the sperm.
So it's a very interesting kind of meet cute, in the romantic comedy way. So let me ask you this: does the sperm donor ever show up in the show?
I thought that would be a good storyline for possibly a second season.
Yeah.
Though I have been asked that a lot. It's making me wonder if I should bring that up earlier.
Well, it's interesting because, as you were explaining this, I was thinking I could see these two couples wanting this perfect sperm donor and each having a different angle on what makes this person so perfect.
Well, they'd have to because they're so different, right?
Right. And then after the pregnancies are completed and they have the babies, then you meet the guy. And the guy, whatever it says on the piece of paper, is completely different from that. And right?
Well, and I just want to say, Lauren, we're going to come up with a bunch of ideas. You're going to come up with ideas. Ideas definitely suck, and we'll come up with some really crappy ones. But we can also come up with good ones that are not right.
Right.
That are going to work against you because you're like, oh, that's a good idea, and then after you spend a bunch of time, you end up discarding it because you realize it led you in the wrong direction.
But it's the fun of the writer's room is people throwing out ideas that may or may not be quite right, but they also sort of expand what you're thinking about in some way.
Yeah. So the reason I asked how old the kids are, if they're even born, is not to make it about them, but what is, I was trying to figure out, why do these people have anything to do with each other once the sperm has been delivered? And there's any number of it. Do you have any thoughts on that? What keeps them together?
So I have two ideas. And the first idea was that I had for one of the couples, I should mention, one of the first couple that I thought about is a very liberal, younger lesbian couple. And then the second one is an older, well, not older, but like late 30s, conservative couple, very religious. Mm-hmm. So I had one of the characters in the lesbian couple to have been disowned by her family previously for being gay. And I kind of had it, I thought that this woman is going to want everyone who will love her child in her child's life, especially a potential half sibling. And then someone suggested, well, what if like one of the people in the lesbian couple was actually related to one of the people in the other couple? And I was like, oh no, that's a pretty good idea. So now I've been thinking, well, what if that woman who was disowned from her family is actually related to the woman in the other conservative couple? And that she had previously been disowned from the family, and she's finally meeting kind of her sister again through this instance. So that's another way.
Hold on. So we can process that because, our RAM is not, we didn't upgrade to the full 16 gigs when we picked these brains. It feels a little small town, though, doesn't it?
There's a hint of tiny town, but
yeah.
I can see the potential for it, though, too.
Yeah. I mean, all right, so the idea of, let's just step back for a sec. So we've got two younger lesbians and two, a couple of, so they're in their 20s if they're younger, so I think what you're thinking, right? If the other ones you're saying older.
Late 20s, early 30s.
And the other ones are 10 years older, say, and they're more of they're a straight couple, and they're more conservative, right? Mm-hmm. So already you've got built-in conflict. That's great. But we have four characters here, and we're approaching them as couples. And I think we're leaving a lot of character stuff on the table if we don't take a minute and say, what are each individual of the four like? But I still don't know why they are forced to stay together for the duration of the series.
I would pitch that, because this was one of my first questions too, is that it would be character motivation. For example, the mom in the conservative couple feels very strongly about blood ties. Right. And you just get people who want that drive for the siblings to know each other, hell or high water.
Right.
And as long as you really only need one of the four people to be passionate about it, to continue to intrude into the other people's lives.
Or one in each couple.
Either way.
That's
right?
the one thing they have in common, is that they believe
is the desire for the siblings to know each other.
Or that was set down by the, that was one of the conditions of you will get the sperm.
Right. Until they find out the sperm donor contributed at another sperm bank, and there's another kid out there in the world completely.
Okay. All right.
That's season 3.
Yeah. but that, you see okay, so now we have them together. Any of those ideas make sense to you, or do you have a different one?
Well, I like the idea of the female character within the straight couple. Her name I have for her is Christina. I like the idea of her being obsessed with blood ties. Out of all the characters, I have her as kind of the most out there character. And I can definitely see her being obsessed with blood ties, with potentially, because she's going to somewhat vilify the other couple, with potentially saving her child's half sibling from lesbianism, basically.
Is Christina the one that got tossed because she's gay?
No, she's the wife of the conservative couple.
Okay, and because I could see that, but I wonder if the woman who got tossed because she was gay, I love the idea that she's the one that when Christina reaches out to them and says, I want our kids to be family, she's like, yes, I do too.
Families can have different shapes, and I want to forge a family for my child with her sibling.
Because I was denied my family, and I'm creating the one I was birth family, and now I'm creating my own family, and I don't want people torn apart the way that I was torn apart. That may be overly simplistic, but God, I love simple sometimes, right? As a viewer.
For this kind of stuff, right, it's emotional drive, right? These are kids, like Sam and I are both parents. Like you have a different set of emotions that comes into play when you have children or even deciding to have children, right? I remember, because there's, with all the fetal testing you do these days, like during the course of a pregnancy, every couple confronts what if the tests come back and there's something slightly off or risk that something could be wrong with the child? What are you going to do?
Am I willing to carry this child to term? And that's the question. But I get your connection.
It's just all that, right? Yeah. Like you start making a set of decisions that are beyond things you've ever had to face when you're just one person loose in the world.
Right. And then the baby's born, and the simple, probably cheesy scene is they're both at the hospital delivering. I guess they wouldn't be at the same one, but for some reason
it could be.
That's a little TV. But the babies, they see the other babies. Like maybe someone's curious to see how the other baby turns, whatever it is. And in that moment, faced with these two babies who are not characters necessarily, it becomes something different. It's not the intellectual. I'm going to get my baby. I got the DNA. Thank you very much. And now we're going to go live our life. And we're going to have nothing to do with these creepy people at all, both couples think. But then faced with the fact that there are actually two children who have a sibling. They, one of them, Christina, changes their mind. Is that sort of what you're thinking?
Well, so...
Oh, God, she hated that idea. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
It's processing. I have the little Mac rainbow wheel going on in my head right now. So I have so many different ideas for how kind of the series could go. I don't know what's the right one.
Well, Jim doesn't know either, but go ahead. We'll try.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I won't give you 6 answers.
One of the things, probably the main thing that I kind of thought of was, like, they decide to, like, get together. They kind of have that relationship going through, like, pregnancy a little bit, but inevitably, like, it's not going to end up working. Like, they're going to hate each other. And there needs to be a lot more to tie themselves together. And I do have that idea, like, written down at the end of the first season when they do end up meeting, like, their kids end up meeting each other. And then there is kind of, I like how you described that emotional moment, something that goes beyond what they might have previously considered as rational.
Right.
Did you say the end of the first season?
Yeah.
So what are we doing the whole season if they haven't even met each other? Or you mean the kids haven't met each other?
The kids haven't met each other because they're not born yet, I guess.
But then my question is...
So is it pregnancy for season 1?
That was my thought.
But then why are they hanging together? Why are they in each other's worlds? That's something that has to be...
It feels like the birth almost needs to be the end of the pilot or something, because that's when they're actually tied, is when you have a child who has a sibling.
You know what I mean? I don't want to get too technical in terms of but we just have to... Every show, there has to be a reason, something that keeps forcing these people to be together, whatever it is. Either they're married or they're related and they own a business together. You can go down through all the all the shows. People have a reason to be together, and what is their reason is a central question.
The other question would be, where does this take place? If it's in a small enough place, then you could see them winding up at the same hospitals, having the same doctors, having sort of a social world that intersects tangentially, and so that even if they're breaking apart and having attitudes towards each other, they're still encountering each other with some regularity.
It depends who's asking. If an American is asking where it takes place, I have Bowling Green, Kentucky, because based on what I know about the town, there's a lot of Republican people there, but there's also a lot of liberal people there as well because of the university. College town. There's a lot of international students. If it's someone's asking in Canada, well, if something's going to be made in Canada, it has to take place in Canada. I thought Hamilton, Ontario, for somewhat similar reasons.
I mean, the thing is, it would have to be pretty small. Bowling Green's not that small, but it has to be small enough so that they are interacting. And, there's always, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Could be outside of Bowling Green.
It doesn't matter. But the thing is, as long as by the end, in that case, in the end of the pilot, they need to see the babies then if you are using that convention. Because I need to know, this is not a show about four people running into each other for the next 10 episodes or 20 episodes. This is
that's the thing. It feels like we need the babies because that is the bond. Is we each have a child and they have a sibling. That's the crux of the show.
Right.
That's the nexus.
And that doesn't mean you're seeing the babies all the time either. It just means
Okay.
that you're connected. That's the connection. They could say see ya, and then we come back and it's 5 years later if you wanted 5-year-olds. And now there's a reason why they need to be together, whatever it is, and you can manufacture it. But medical or something else.
Or
they meet each other coincidentally and they want to know each other. These two little kids are like, that's my brother. And then the parents have no choice. There's so many versions of it, and you'll probably come up with one that's much better. But I think that's essential.
No, I do like that. I feel like as I've been thinking about this, I've just been really caught up in the idea of it's sperm exclusivity and they can only share, but that doesn't have to be as big a part of the show as I think I was envisioning it.
Well,
and I like...
I was going to say, it does feel it's a good inciting incident, right? It's the meet cute, right? It's what does bring them into each other's worlds, but then that it doesn't have that much legs on its own.
Right. The legs are the fact that they don't get along, but they're tied to something, which, as Jim pointed out, that's a convention. But here's the thing. Don't run away from the convention, right? Don't run. That's a mistake that I think we have made, probably still make, which is we run away from it because the worst thing that we can say is that feels very TV, right? Which is tired, tired.
Too over-familiar.
You're overly familiar. But the thing is, the convention isn't necessarily tired. It's the way the execution, and that comes down to your characters, and that comes down to what is really going on with them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And you have an eclectic mix of people here. Like the foundation of your show is novel. These people feel like an interesting ensemble, even without getting into the details of the characters yet. It feels like your execution is probably going to be interesting enough to cover up conventions if you want to use them, because how it comes out on the page is going to be different than things we've seen before.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I like what you say about conventions. I mean, like the first thing that when you were talking, like the kids need to be born, the first thing I thought is, oh, well, neither kid will stop screaming until they're with the baby sibling. But I do feel like that's a worn kind of thing in TV. Like the kid won't stop screaming until it's with something, and then finally everything's right. Like I'm thinking of the Office episode where Pam and Jim's kid won't stop screaming until it's with Dwight, and so they have to do all these stupid things even though they don't want to. I mean, I do feel like that is kind of an easy way, something that's been used commonly in TV, like the baby needs this, so we'll do anything we can to make that right.
Well, here's first of all, when you use that word easy, I would say that go a lot of different ways. The writing is so hard that sometimes when the Lord gives you something that's easy,
you take it with both hands.
You don't have to fight it. And when you're talking, when you said, by the way, I haven't seen that episode of The Office, but when you said the baby won't stop crying around Dwight, I smiled immediately.
Yeah,
because it was such a good idea. So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just saying, be careful about writing away from something. If it doesn't spark to you, if it's like you feel that that's tired, if you are bored with that idea, don't do it.
Right.
But don't not do it because you think everyone else is going to be bored with an idea. Because if it's specific enough, it won't matter. And I mean, Jim and I are writing the space thing right now. I think I mentioned before. And, my first television show that I ever loved was, Star Trek, obviously original flavor, deeply in reruns. I was allowed to watch with my mom during dinner, on Channel 9 in New York, WOR. And it was all cheesy and, obviously everything was better, but I loved that show. And I still want to write space shows, and I'm not bored with them. Everyone, I'm watching one now, The Expanse. So I don't write away from something. Write towards something that really makes you laugh or makes you feel something, because I think that's the money for you, for anybody.
It can be small too, like obviously, like Jim and Pam's kid only finding peace around Dwight. That's an entire episode of The Office, and that's episode 123, I think, in the series, right?
Right.
We're way down the pike. For this kind of thing, though, if, say, it's Bowling Green, Kentucky, and they both wind up at the same hospital, delivering at the same time for whatever reason that is.
They have the same doctor who induces on Tuesdays.
Yeah, right? Like, whatever, 2 C-sections in a row or whatever. But then the kids are crying or whatever, and they wind up in beds beside each other in the nursery, and they calm down. Like, just that beat, and just seeing that, and these parents who are frazzled, who are at war over exclusivity, standing at the glass window looking in at their children who found peace only next to each other, boom, that feeds, if one person, each couple has been feeling like, but it's wrong to keep these two apart, and then you see something like that, instant emotional chemistry, and I get it if they decide that they need to somehow find a way to keep the kids.
And the fact that the kids are not crying is not the joke or not the important part. It's that's the final grain of sand, the final thing. Right. But if we didn't get to know these characters, the one person in each couple, or maybe just the one person out of the four who is really having some second thoughts about this, or something,
or campaigning for the fact that the kids should be in some way together,
or whatever, and then they see that, and then the one who was fighting her, or the one that was fighting him, or whatever couple and whoever it is, that's the moment they cave. It's not about the crying. That's not the important part. It's about the culmination of their desires, which is really the whole show, because you're giving them exactly what they want ultimately, and it's the worst thing because now they have to be with these people that they loathe.
And you can have a character.
I really like that.
Yeah, and you can have a character who is completely adamant and will not budge, and with one look through the window at their child, they can pivot 180 degrees, and it's sold. Anyone who's a parent knows immediately that you will do anything for your child, and they can pivot and just be like, walk over to the other couple and say, we need to have them together all the time, and you're in.
Right.
You buy it.
I don't know if you saw the pilot of This Is Us, right?
Yeah.
Right. Do you remember? And then the couple, the Mandy Moore character and the guy from Gilmore Girls, Milo. Anyway,
there's no way to tell.
Yeah, but did their child die or almost die? I can't remember.
But it died. There were supposed to be 3, and there were 2.
That's right. There's supposed to be 2, and then they picked up a third.
Yeah, they went up and took it.
They just went up and basically took it. And the thing is, we understood them at that time. We finally understood why they did it. And so it wasn't just the act of doing it. It was the whole story leading up to it. And it's that's a structure. By the way, this structure works, and it will be really hard to write, and we won't be around for that. So I want you to know.
Good luck.
That we get to do the easy part, which is just spitball. And I just want to recognize that spitballing is fun and easy, and then someone's got to do the work, and then you're in it and you're like, no, that doesn't work at all, and we'll be nowhere around at that point.
That's great.
Okay. So I'm sorry for that.
So talking going forward, right? You said you had a bunch of different thoughts about where to take the series as a whole, and thinking about a Bible for the show, that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts?
I've had like notes for first season. Past the first season, I don't want to think about that ever.
And you don't need to.
That's the right answer. That's right.
Right
you
answer.
Don't need to.
Yeah.
You need some general. You'll spaghetti against the wall, and then after that, some like a this and that and the other, and you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad that's not just me. So for the first season, I had planned to go through kind of their pregnancies, and then one of the big things that I wanted to include is the idea of daycare, and the religious conservative couple has access to a great daycare through their church. And I wanted the lesbian couple to really want in at that daycare, so that like their kid it's basically free daycare provided through the church. So that's kind of one of the storylines I had. And at one point I wanted the religious couple to end up standing up for the lesbian couple in that church.
Yeah.
That was probably like one of the main arcs I had, aside like pregnancy and giving birth and stuff like that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That could almost be your pilot story too. It may be too much, but the thing is, the one thing that does that I like is it gives that the conservative family. We don't want them to be
one-dimensional stereotypes.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And nobody wants anybody to be one-dimensional stereotypes. But because I think maybe because Jim and I are so liberal and so progressive, that when we're writing somebody in that way, we want to make sure that we really dimensionalize them, so we're not demonizing a viewpoint and maybe demonize prejudice. I want to demonize the prejudice, but not the person who feels the prejudice, if that makes sense.
Hate the sin, but not the sinner.
Yeah, because
in reverse.
It's more interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
So what we're trying to get at here is if there's that one moment where one of them stands up for the gay couple or the kid of the gay couple, in that moment, I now understand that they don't like each other, they don't understand each other, but they there's something that there's a goodness between them.
They actually share a common value.
Yeah.
Which would surprise both of them, perhaps.
Yeah. And there, I don't know if that has to come in the pilot. That may be too much, but that's a great episode by itself. That is a great episode. And by the way, in a Bible, you don't have to lay out 10 episodes. You could lay out 2 more. You can say, well, here's 2 or 3 more episode ideas. And then by the end of the season, they're going to get to here. And it's a lot more than that, but that's enough for now. You really don't need a lot more.
Everyone knows that there's a saying in war that no plan of action survives contact with the enemy. It's the same thing with concepts for series and having contact with your network. Right. There's or contact with the audience, or pick how you want to do it. Like, it's ultimately a big collaboration. There's a lot of different stakeholders in the process of making a TV show. And, you need to have your vision and hold on to what's fundamental to you about the show. That's what will keep it on the air, and it will get you past the rocks of other people's notes and problems. But you also have to listen to and incorporate some of those things, because sometimes there's good ideas out there.
That's right. And also, you don't have to write the Bible either right now. I know this came up, but that's not – you just need to write the pilot. If someone loves it –
Right, you've already written a pilot, right?
I have. I wrote it for a class. Now I'm going to totally rewrite it after this conversation. So
and that's what we're here for.
Consider it unwritten.
Yeah, we're here to destroy your dreams, one page at a time.
Yeah, it was quick. You did a good job.
We do it to each other all
the time.
Well, no, look, writing the script, I mean, I just want to tell you, we Jim and I have written a lot of scripts. We've written them separately. Because on shows we write a lot of scripts that we are sole credit, and we do that, and we write separately, we write together. And the script we're on now, that we are writing, and we've done, this is probably draft 10, and part of it in this case was it was one kind of show, and we shifted the entirety of its conception, which I don't recommend.
Inch by painful inch.
Yeah.
we reversed course on what the show was like.
Yeah, I don't recommend
don't do it this
that.
way.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes. We didn't do that on Haven. When we were much more junior writers, right? This is going back a ways. When we first wrote it, we knew what it was straight out of the gate, and so it goes both ways. But throwing out a draft, I mean, that is just par for the course. And I only say that just so that it hopefully doesn't demoralize you. That just like that crazy ass job that you had when you were a kid went a little sideways there at the end, but it doesn't mean that all that good work that you did went away. It's exactly the same thing. We needed sometimes we need to get a version out. Just get it out so we know what we don't like as much as we know what we like.
Yep.
And normally I'd say, this is the part it's easy for me to say, but believe me, that is not easy for me to say.
Painful for me to say.
There's a lot of blood on the table and tears with that one. So what are you going to do now? What's your next step?
I need 2 hours to think about this. Well, I want to re-envision the first episode and then the first season. I mean, I agree with you about the needing to see the babies in the first episode. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my ideas for the first season that I had can work and might even work better with the baby's actually born. I mean, like the daycare storyline, it probably makes more sense when the babies are actually born. I think right now I'm kind of thinking about individual character storylines and how they can fit in amongst this larger story of the two couples. Because I know like in this call, I've talked only about the couples kind of as couples, but then I also do want to have those individual storylines and arcs. So I think that's another thing that I need to look at.
Yeah, Lauren, I was going to pitch to you, two things. One is that, if there's things you really love about the pregnancy storyline, there's always a chance that you could do flashbacks. If you wanted to if there were moments you wanted to capture like that, I think you certainly could. But also that I think the really useful thing for you to do right now is to do your character matrix. Like, what are each of the 4 major characters and what do they want? How do they conflict with each other? Because you want all 4 of them to kind of be, 4 corners of a square.
I think you need to talk about what a character matrix is and how that works.
I didn't mean that in the explicit tool way that we use. I'm just talking about like what are each of their wants, what do they desire, what do they hate, what do they value in the world. And by the time if they all have some opposing elements in that, you're going to find ways that they naturally clash with each other, and you might find surprising alliances between these two couples. Like there's a world where one person from each couple forms like a secret friendship they don't want to let their spouse know about because they actually find themselves aligned about something or some things.
Yeah.
And that can be fun.
Let me unpack some of the stuff that Jim said there, because he said a lot of stuff. First of all, the idea of what they want, what do they need, what's getting in their way, all that stuff, that can be a list, and that's a really important, essential, just writing out your characters, right? And that's a list of different things. And he's right. If you can start to see that one person loves cheese and then the other one is deathly allergic to cheese, okay, I've got a point of conflict, and that's great. But the matrix part is basically on one side, you just list every character, however many there are, probably more than 4. But your characters, say 6, just for pick a number. And then on the bottom, you list those 6 again. And so now you are saying, what is the relationship between Tom and Susan? What's the relationship between Tom and Betsy? What's the relationship between Tom, every single character? And what's the relationship between Tom and Tom? How does he feel about himself? What are his issues? And as you get into those, and that's just an exercise.
And you can expand that to the major topics of the show, like siblings, blood ties, like some of these other main points you're hitting, because for 3 of the characters, the idea of siblings, that unusual families can happen in this kind of way could seem perfectly logical. But for one person, that's insanity. That's not a real family. And they refuse to recognize that.
So I would just make Tom's family. I would careful about
Tom, Ray, family, Susan, Ray, family.
Yeah. And so those are things that we've done. And the thing is that I want to be careful here, because some of this can be really useful and some of it can be elaborate masturbation. And I'm not against either of those things, but you have to decide what you want to do, right? It's like coming up with huge backstories for characters and then you find out you really don't have any actual information, but you know what the name of the 3rd grade teacher is. So I don't need to know what Tom feels about everything. But if I know how he feels about the other characters and I know how he feels about the basic theme that I'm exploring in this episode or in this show for the pilot, that's enough.
Christianity, family, gay people, like there's major topics that are just baked into these relationships that you could think about how each person relates to those ideas.
And here's the main point. You do not have to address every one of those in your pilot. That's the only thing.
You just need to know where the characters...
Yeah, you just have them all laid out, and you know how Tom feels about Christianity, and it may never come up. I mean, it sounds like it will in your thing, but it may never come up. But it's in there if you want it. It's a tool in the box, but you don't have to take it out. And I say that emphatically so that you don't get overwhelmed by it, and that it becomes your tools don't become, where do I start? I think where you start is, what's the story I want to tell? How many twists and turns? What are the turns? What are the big changes that happen in the pilot? And then who are my characters? And let me start there. And then you can use these matrix tool, and you can use the character list of all the attributes. You can go from that.
And as you look at each of the characters, every character has some events in their past that have shaped them. Things that that have wounded them or changed them or made them hate something or made them fall in love with something, right? And that's useful to have, because like the one character who was kicked out of her family for being gay. Like that's definitely like a flashing red light in the history of that character that's going to affect how they feel about a lot of things. Every character is going to have a thing or two like that. You don't have to bring it all up in the pilot, but if you have some sense of what those might be, that's really useful. And then I tend to think that most couples in some way match up, because there are ways in which they are a salve to the other person's big wound in life, or they certainly can be, right? And that gives you places to find emotion between your two couples, as well as friction, as if they step away from tending how they normally tend their lover's wound to say, actually, you're fucked up about this topic and you're wrong. Right. And that other couple's right. Yeah. And that's
hard. That's a hard conversation. Yeah. Now, Lauren, are you married? You ever been married?
No.
Okay. I don't know how old you are. It's not my business, but I'm just saying, if you haven't been married, I will tell you that the person you're married to, you love the most, and they drive you absolutely crazy. Sometimes in the same day.
Sometimes in the same sentence.
Yeah. So there is that intimacy, and that's the real intimacy of a couple, married or otherwise. But that's the real intimacy of a couple, right? And I'm really interested about these people, because so many issues are coming up. Family, what it means to be a parent, what it means to not be able to have the kid biologically can be an issue.
Yeah.
What the issue...
There's big feelings of of failure, or...
Right.
or this is our miracle. no,
Right.
this is only necessary because I'm a complete failure at
Right. Thinks the one dude out of
doing
these
my
four.
end of propagating.
Or he's fine with it, and his wife feels that he failed her in some way. And she
Right.
feels terrible about that. That would be the counter, not obvious neuroses, because we're always looking for the not obvious neuroses. But all right, let's pause for a second. Lauren, we've just threw a ton of stuff at you. What do you think? And you can't call back later.
Okay.
Well, you can. We just won't be here. But JR can help you out.
I like what you say about listing like what they want. And I do think I've gone way overboard in a lot of areas where I'll write something about one of these characters and I'm like, great, well, I'm glad I know that. No one else is ever going to know that. That's so useless.
That's common. That happens all the time. Everybody does that.
Yeah, I think I have like those big wounds for a lot of the characters. I hope they're compatible. I didn't think as much about if those wounds are kind of compatible with one another and making a good story amongst the couples.
That could almost be good, because if you didn't tailor them to each other, well, then you got to put on your character hat and think about, well, why would that person be the right answer to this person's problem, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get something interesting and unexpected, maybe, or you'll change them.
It doesn't. The thing that brings people together is not always A to B. I am broken in this way.
That's right.
And you are this way in a good way, and that's what brings us together. No, it could just be that you do this other thing that is essential to me, and that nobody knows about.
You distract me from the thing that drives me crazy because you put this in my world.
It's as long as they genuinely feel it, and we go, oh, I see that. It's enough. It doesn't have to be perfect math, because people aren't perfect math.
Yeah, it's almost always surprising math, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, Lauren, I think just your core idea and the characters that you chose to live it out is great. Like it's a very interesting novel circumstance, and you picked two couples that are very very diverse in their experiences of the world and expectations of life, which is a ton of fodder for story.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this is a deep well, to say exactly what Jim just said, only shorter. But it is. It really is. There are. And once you actually make these characters specific, and you start asking questions, I think you're going to have almost too much, which is where you want to be.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
You don't want to be lean. You want to, the thing I think with every draft is hopefully it gets shorter, right? But, and it gets shorter because you're trimming away the fat, which means you kind of have to start long, right?
Yeah.
So you can trim away the stuff that doesn't matter, which you don't know when you're writing. Or the worst feeling is when you're writing something, you know this is not going to stick, and you're like, God damn, I don't know what else to do, and you just keep typing. But then you'll trim it down. So having too much, I always think, is the way you want to walk into a pilot. And then you're struggling to get it down. And if you can get it down to whatever page count you've decided is right for this, it's only the good stuff left. And that's.
Can I quickly ask? So obviously, like, these are 4 people. I feel like each of these people have gone through things related to different themes, and essentially it could be a very broad story. Like, how do you decide like what to really narrow it down to?
Well, they do have lives outside of having a baby, right? All 4 of them. And I don't think we can go with all of them to their job, and maybe there's only 2 jobs. There's 2 breadwinners in each family. But you have to decide what's that other life, right? What are they doing, and keep it simple.
I mean, it really depends on if, say, for example, you decide that the way to end the pilot is the birth of the babies, which puts in context, it gives you a reason to talk about a bunch of this other stuff that's come up, whether it's flashbacks or conversations or they're running into each other at the hospital, whatever that is, right? But if that's your end point for the first episode, well, now you know the things you need to establish in the pilot. Why are they in this world? Oh, exclusivity of the sperm donor, right? And you're going to have a number of beats you need to get out to make that make sense. You need to establish that each couple and sort of their individual foibles and their character as a couple together, and then the conflict between them in a half-hour comedy, that and the fact of they're in the hospital or they're racing to get to the hospital, they're having the birth of the babies, like, that's it. That's all you have time for. Yeah,
these are really small moves. They're not small in terms of importance to the character and their conflicts, but they're small in terms of they don't have to be, and then the earth cools, and then we built a hospital. It's really, we go into the hospital, and now we have challenges, and that's a bunch of pages right there, if they're good.
Right, and comedy, if you're, do you see this as like a multi-camera, or is this single camera?
Probably a single camera.
Yeah, that's better. You have a little more, to me, Sam and I used to write, we wrote a few dramedy movies back in the day.
And about 10 terrible sitcom
Yeah.
spec scripts.
We kept leaning more and more into drama because as you begin accessing the emotion, you tend to want to move away from the 3 jokes a page of a sitcom script towards it's funny, but it's funny it's driven by character rather than just people cracking wise kind of thing.
Right.
So that's good, like, because and again, the context you're talking about, the fundamental conflict and circumstance is the birth of babies, which is foundational human, like, it's just deeply invested with emotion and conflict in every direction. You're going to be able to come up with a ton of stuff.
As I said, hopefully too much.
Yeah, and then just write everything you think could be relevant, and then then you have to put a critical eye on it and say, well, what do I need to know? What's really emotional? What really makes me want to know these people? What tells me what I need to know about each of these characters?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of that make sense?
It does. It does.
Right.
I mean, what do I want to know?
Yeah. What interests you?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're too young to have or don't have a family of your you having children and kids and all that, I would talk to some of the people that do. You do know this stuff because we all watch it. I mean, we were part
baked
of
into being human.
Yeah, but you might get some insight into from other people, and they're, that's what's important to you, really?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's moments when that are very specific to this world that when I talk to other parents, I know, which is, there's the moments where pregnant women and men trying to help pregnant women. That I don't understand that, and I've done it twice.
They're literally out of their minds on hormones.
I watched my wife weep uncontrollably because the takeout Chinese order we got was wrong, and and then she started racking sobs, and I was like, "What?" I mean, this is 18 years ago, so I was really I was new to this, and now I know. Now you'd think I would have known something, but I knew nothing. And there's you can do that the slapstick version. Or you can do that the heartfelt, really a person doesn't know what to do. And how does it work when you have 2 women and one of them is carrying the baby? How does the other woman feel? I could not write that without calling women who have been in that position.
Right.
Right? And what does that mean? I mean, does it mean anything? Maybe they'll say, I never wanted to have a kid. I don't care. This is great. And I'm like you.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on either. And that would be an answer. But I would have to call people and start talking about it to find out those answers.
Mm-hmm. That's how it is with my partner, who is also a woman. She's like, no, that's your job, and I'm like, oh, great. So
does that come up in the first date? Could like
passing up hot potato.
Do you want kids? And when I mean you, yeah. So I don't. These are all this is such a. The reason I think Jim's sparking to, and I am too, is that it's so fraught.
Yeah,
there's so many.
It's just
things.
loaded.
It's just loaded, and it's loaded from politics, gender, sexuality,
religion,
how you were raised, and that's why I think we're so sparking to it.
Yeah.
And so don't run from the tropes. This is good tea, really good.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Lauren.
Lauren,
this is a lot of fun to talk about. I hope I get to see it someday.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
Okay.
Thanks, Lauren.
And that's all we've got for you this week. Our producer, J.R. Zamora-Thal, is working the mixing board.
Our logo was designed by Julien Debar-Monclair, and our music was provided by Buddha-Rays out of Austin, Texas.
If you want to get in touch, we are at The Sam and Jim on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as The Writers' Room with Sam and Jim.
And if you like hanging out in the room with us, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell a friend, would you, so we can get JR paid. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.